This is my property right here. This is about the property line. This is what I refer to as my front yard. This is Mr. Cooney's house, my driveway. There was a trailer here for years. That's my cabin. That's my other cabin that I purchased in the year 2000. And pretty much everything on this side of the creek is my property. Here's what the path looked like when I put up the chain. And there had been prior damage, and I had asked Mr. Cooney about that, and he had denied any knowledge of it. After repairing and resealing my path in the fall, this is what it looks like by the end of March. May 5th, 2022. This is the first time that Mr. Cooney has been to his property that I'm aware of since last September. So he's cut his grass, he's cut my grass, and he's dumped it all over here on my property. The ground's really wet down here, as you can see from his tracks. He hasn't even finished cutting his own grass, it's so wet, but he had no problem running his mower over my grass and making a muddy mess. May 12th, I maintained my path and my front yard, and I do it with a weed whacker. It takes me about 20 minutes to go through this. May 19th, I maintained my property. May 25th, I maintained my property and my path, and here they are here. June 10th, 2022, I maintained my property and my path, and as you can see, Mr. Cooney's yard is getting out of control here. Some of his grass is up to my knee, and some of it's up to my waist. June 18th, Mr. Cooney returns to his property. His grass was so tall that he couldn't bag it, so he shot all the dead grass onto my yard, and then drove over it and over it and over it with his riding mower, beating it down into the ground. There's a lot of thatch here. Here's what it looked like just 8 days ago, nice and green, and this is what it looks like now. I get the blower and clean it up, and here you'll see that it's just thick thatch. It's all dead, so he did this just days after I cut my grass. Maintain my grass. You can see right here how thick that thatch is that he left. So I do my best to clean it up with the hand blower. I come back the next week, maintain my grass, and I bring a backpack blower this time to do a better job. And you can see how my grass is all burned out from that thatch that he blew over from his yard. Mr. Cooney's yard is starting to get out of control again and still hasn't been weed whacked this year. July 1st, this is the vehicle that Mr. Cooney usually drives here. And he's been here again. He's cut his grass very low to match mine, and he's weed whacked his yard, and he's dumped everything on my property again. As you can see, he's driven his riding mower over and over and over the pile again, smashing it down. We kick it up here so that you can see the thatch. It's still green underneath, so it hasn't been there that long. And he's also dumped brush over the bank by the creek. Here it is right here, June 10th, and of course those trees are now gone. Here's my path to my yard. Mr. Cooney has been riding up and down on it, scalping it with his riding mower. You can see it here. Up until the time he got here, it was green, grass growing. Now it's dead. Here's a posted sign. I installed it on 5/25. There was no problem with it on 6/18, but as soon as Mr. Cooney shows up with a weed whacker, my sign gets weed whacked 14 foot in the air. July 9th, 2022. I maintain my property again, and you can see that pile I haven't cleaned up yet, but I kick it up here so that you can see how much stuff he's dumped here in the past 2 times. It's quite a bit of thatch. I blow it up here so you can see how much it is before I go ahead and clean it up. July 16th, you can see how Mr. Cooney is riding down my path on his riding mower with his deck the entire way down, just scalping it and leaving ruts the whole way down. He's dumped his grass here again. It's really green this time, so this is really fresh. And of course, here's where his deck's scalping. And here's Mrs. Cooney enjoying a book around a ring of creek rock, the same creek rock that I use when I have a fire. A couple days ago, there was roadkill on the road, and I'm pretty sure that's the same one thrown onto our property. July 26th, Mr. Cooney continues to ride up and down the path, and he continues to dump on my property. I blow it up here so you can see how much there is, and that is a piece of the no trespassing sign that was weed whacked at the end of June. August 15th, Mr. Cooney has dumped brush again, grass and thatch. I maintain my property. I clean up his brush and his thatch, and I realize I haven't showed where that's going, but that goes all the way up the hill across the road up to my property. So he's also been dumping on this corner here where he's dumped in the past and covered it up with brush, and he's dumped more brush over here on top of it. And I'll show you where it is here. I'm up on top of his property here. This is his parking pad. And here's the trees where the brush came from. And here's over the corner of his property where he's dumping it. No one can reach over here but Mr. Cooney. September 3rd, 2022, Mr. Cooney has dumped more brush, more thatch, more grass on my property. And of course he's left his riding mower tracks in it again. And as we clean this up here, we notice that there's someone's whistling. And so Mr. Cooney lets us know that he's up on his porch watching us clean up his mess. And you can see here that he's cut back even further onto my property. So I clean up Mr. Cooney's mess while he watches. October 11th, this is what fall maintenance looks like on this side of my property. You got to clean up a lot of leaves, especially on the path. Grass will not grow on this path if you leave leaves here all winter long. So I maintain my property here, showing that Mr. Cooney does not maintain his, and he's put up a camera on us. It's looking directly at the corner of my yard. It's not looking at his yard at all. Here I do a lot of reseeding, and I reseed the scalp marks that he did, and I reseed the pathway as well. 13 days later, we do another leaf cleanup. You can see Mr. Cooney still hasn't cleaned his leaves. November 10th, I do some reseeding, especially at the top of the path where Mr. Cooney keeps turning his riding mower around scalping. December 16th, Mr. Cooney was here, but he still did not do a fall cleanup. However, my other neighbor on the other side was here, and he cleaned his leaves up. I just want to show the seed that I've planted is coming up, as you can see here. April 6, 2023, you can see the grass I planted is coming in. Mr. Cooney has put a no trespassing sign on my property. Here's the property marker, should be back there. He never did any kind of fall maintenance on his property at all. And again, the property marker should be way back there. We put a fire ring together to burn the twigs and branches. And I do a little reseeding at the top of the path. May 10th, our grass is coming in pretty good, but our rock ring is missing, and the private property sign has been moved even further onto my property. The rocks to my fire ring are gone. This has happened before, so of course I know that they'll be over the embankment to the creek. I moved Mr. Cooney's no trespassing sign into his own yard and maintained my property. Last month, Mr. Cooney was notified by his attorney that his sign was on my yard, and instead of moving it back, he moved it forward. We rebuilt our fire pit, and 11 days later, it's gone. Mr. Cooney has again dumped on my property and smashed it down again and again with his riding mower. Just 10 days ago, this was all the green grass that was coming up here, and here we are now, all dead, all smashed down. And not even just this area here, but over here now as well. Where our fire pit was is now a snake skin or snake shed of a black snake, also known as a rat snake. And of course our fire pit has been thrown over the bank into the creek. And there's been more brush dumped over the side as well. I kick up the thatch here so that you can see how green it is underneath. It hasn't been here that long. And I get a rake so you can see exactly how much there is. We put our rock ring back, and you can see Mr. Cooney is killing a bigger patch of grass this year. We take his garbage out and maintain our property. June 9th, our fire pit is gone again. Mr. Cooney's dumped grass again. This time it's pretty green, so we once again, missed him by a little bit here. I kick it around so you can see it, and of course our rocks are in the creek again. I'm showing that not only does Mr. Cooney dump his grass here, but he scrapes out the deck of his mower as well. We put our rock ring back and maintain our property. June 28th, this is right after the deposition where Mr. Cooney admitted to the past damage in September and prior damage beyond that. He also admitted to throwing my exploding rocks into the creek. And remember, these are the same stones that the Cooneys have in their fire pit. July 16th, 2023, Mr. Cooney has cut back a little bit further on my property again, as he did the year before, and he's dumped it here behind the tree I have the no trespassing sign on. He's dumped a new pile over here. I kick it up so you can see it. And of course, this is the grass he's already killed, and now he started on a new area. Our fire pit is strewn about. It looks like he's just running into it with his riding mower. Of course, there are a couple rocks over the bank here. We notice that he's put up a light that's directly shining at our property on a motion detector. And it's shining right over here at the bottom of my path. I maintain my property We put our fire ring back. 7 days later, same thing with a little bit of litter this time too. I maintained my path in my front yard. August 12th, same thing. The fire pit has been pushed around by a mower. There's more litter in the yard. You can see it was hit by a lawnmower. I maintained my path in my yard and put my rock ring back. August 30th, I maintained my pathway in my yard. October 11th, my fire pit has been pushed around again. We do the first leaf cleanup of the year, which is a pretty big undertaking. Mr. Cooney's property, even up front, is really not being maintained. So we maintain this whole piece here. We do the path, we do the yard. This is what it looks like when it's done. No real maintenance on Mr. Cooney's property, and we put up a no dumping sign when we put our rock ring back together. Here we are a month later, doing the last cleanup of the year. We can see already our no dumping sign's gone, and our rock ring has been pushed around again. And there's something else. We have a trench that was dug at the bottom of our path now, and we'll get back to that after we clean up the leaves here. We clean up more garbage, and we notice Mr. Cooney had made this mark weeks ago, and so he's dug 2 additional holes here, and he gives himself another 1.5 feet every time he measures the property. And he's measuring from the wrong property marker too, by the way. We put our fire ring back together, and the neighbor was up. You can see he's also maintained his property. Here's the culvert I was talking about. We also try to keep it free of leaves. Water goes through there, runs underneath the road right here on my property, and comes out down here. Well, it used to be a French drain down here, but it's got to be packed with mud and such from quads and riding mowers going over it. The water would run down to this area here, Mr. Cooney's property, which is the low spot. February 25th, we're doing some reseeding here and just showing again that Mr. Cooney never did any fall maintenance. April 8th, day of the eclipse, there was a rainstorm 3 days ago, and as you can see, 3 days later, the rain is still running pretty good down my path, and it's following the ruts that were made by the quads and by Mr. Cooney's repeated driving of his riding mower up and down my path. And here's the trench that was dug that's getting deeper and deeper as the water's going out towards the creek. And here right next to our fire pit, you can see how wet the ground gets down here and why I don't want any vehicles down here. And as of April, Mr. Cooney still never cleaned his leaves. May 15th, here we are maintaining our property again. You can see another big storm came through. You see how much water comes down here that it washed all this stuff up from the top of the road. And you can see how deep this trench is getting now. Mr. Cooney has been on his property. His bench is there and 2 logs, but I don't think he's done much maintenance. May 26th, Mr. Cooney's at his property. More roadkill has been thrown onto my driveway, and it appears that Mr. Cooney has brought his riding mower off that trailer you just saw down my pathway underneath my chain. And we had thought that maybe he was sneaking under this chain before, but we couldn't tell because it was such a muddy mess up at the top. There's his tire tracks, and of course there's his riding mower still there. He just done this. He didn't even have a chance to mess with our fire pit yet. You can see his thatch and his grass is still green that he's left here, and he makes some noise up on the deck to let us know that he's watching us. I slip the chain through some cinder blocks to make sure nothing comes in and nothing gets out. June 1st, I maintain my path and my yard, and my fire pit was not messed with for once. June 24th, 2024, Mr. Cooney has put up no trespassing signs and twigs on my property, clearly feet over the property line. He's also left thatch, my fire ring. I remove his twigs and his sign. I notice that his mower has a tarp over it outside of the shed. I maintain my property and my path, and I put up a tent. We also put up another no dumping sign and put our fire ring back together. 2 days later, I put a new trail cam down here because I have a tent down here now and I don't want to have property damage. Here's Kim showing you exactly where his sign was, all the way over there. And this is 628 from the trail cam, and you can see Kim there behind the tent, me in the lower left corner. A day later, here's Mr. Cooney moving the sign and heading behind our tent. Now, for some odd reason, this is all the footage we get of Mr. Cooney. July 2nd, you can see he's pulled out stakes from our tent and our fly, and he's actually tried to pull our tent apart here a little bit. Just nuisance stuff. Here's Mr. Cooney's light pole on the property line. You can see from his own Exhibit C, it goes upstream, not downstream from there. July 12th, I just want to show that the grass that Mr. Cooney destroys does not resolve itself as he claims. If I don't replant it, it does not grow. July 19th, we maintain our property and we notice that someone's painted X's on 4 of our trees at the top of our path, and of course one of them has the cinder blocks tied around it with the chain. The morning of the pre-trial conference, we cover them up with posted signs. We talked to the electric company in the township and actually the logging company they hire, and no one knew anything about these X's. July 29th, I maintain my property. Mr. Cooney has put up a no trespassing sign at the top of his property. Coming down the path here, you can see that he's messed with the tent again, put another no trespassing sign on my property in a different place. And this time he stole the stakes, and here he is on the 26th. Going behind the tent. This is 3 days after the pre-trial conference, and once again, oddly, that's all the footage we get of him. The very next day, we've also noticed that he's installed another camera. This one's pointing directly at our property, right over here, right at the front of my tent. And here I'll show you where the motion detector light that Mr. Cooney installed last fall is shining directly on my property, not on his property at all. August 7th, part of my chores now is carrying around a ladder because my trail cams have to be out of the range of a weed whacker and all over the place, from red X's to my tent and other places as well. I maintain my property. August 23rd, Mr. Cooney's property is still not maintained, although he's put up more no trespassing signs, and these trees, I do believe, are on my property, especially these ones right here. And I'll show you here again. Mr. Cooney's light pole is on the edge of his property. His Exhibit C shows that it runs upstream, which is to my right. That's where he's put his signs, and he's put nails in my trees. Again, there are tent stakes missing from my tent, my fly, and a no trespassing sign in my yard. I just want to point out, no one messes with Mr. Cooney's stuff. Here's his bench, here's his fire pit that you can't even see because his grass is so overgrown. Here's my trail cam from the last 2 weeks. You can see the date and times here. Takes hundreds of photos every day because the tree above that tent will move in the wind, and then all of a sudden on the 13th it stops taking photos. It picks back up on the 16th and takes a series of photos that look like this, and then at the very end, here we see Mr. Cooney leaving my property. We've seen photos like this before. We figured maybe there was a wet leaf or an insect on the camera, but now I'm not so sure. The camera starts taking photos again normal on the 18th, but the quality of the photo has been degraded. As you can see here, before Cooney, after. Before, after. Then on September 14th, the camera picked up someone shining a high-powered light into our camera. Here I'm showing that our camera will pick up deer traveling behind the tent at night, so it's hard to say why it's not picking up Mr. Cooney. September 4th, we maintain our property. Mr. Cooney hasn't maintained his yard since June. September 15th, you can see our grass grows great when we can keep Mr. Cooney off of it, and here's from the bottom as well. We maintain our property, and once again, Mr. Cooney is not maintaining his property since June. Mr. Cooney's signs are still sitting where I threw him in his yard, and his mower is still sitting underneath the tarp there since June. And I just show the tread on this. This is the tread that I've been showing you this whole time. Here's a flashback photo from 2009. You can see that Mr. Cooney can be seen everywhere on my property. This is from my cabin here. And this brings me to the real reason that Mr. Cooney needed access to my property in the first place. It was to bring his mower up and cut his grass. It saved him a lot of time and a lot of effort, and that's how he ended up cutting my path on the way down and on the way back, saying that's the least he could do.